They never left Ash Hollow, and I wasn't alone. They never left Ash Hollow, the realtor had said over the phone, meaning the houses, the taxes, the little iron habits of a town that stubbornly refuses to vanish. I came back because leaving had become a small lie I no longer wanted to tell. The road smelled of something that wasn't smoke and wasn't quite weather. Gray settled on the windshield like a memory no one had dusted away, fine as talc and cool against my skin. The streetlights blinked awake with a tired patience. Somewhere, a porch swing sighed, as if remembering someone who might return at any moment. Houses looked like they were paused mid-sentence, curtains half-pulled, mailboxes bowed with old envelopes, and a faint ragged sent the town treats as ordinary. People moved through doorways with the ease of customs, nods instead of questions, meals instead of meetings. When I said hello, it landed soft, accepted like the settling ash. They were all slightly off, an inch too slow, a laugh that rehearsed itself before it came. Faces lingered in the windows like photographs that had forgotten to sharpen. I told myself I was projecting, that absence always grows a new language. The hush didn't agree. Maeve found me pruning the dead tips from a neighbor's rose bush, her hands working without fuss. She looked smaller than I remembered, as if the years had stacked themselves into the seams of her cardigan. She wiped her palms on her skirt and said, without surprise, that the ash always comes back around harvest. It keeps things here, she said, and laughed once like a dry leaf. Her eyes didn't move to my face when she spoke. Instead, she watched the swing that hung empty from the porch, as if listening for someone to return and take that same creaking rhythm away. At the antique shop, I found a shoebox of photos under a brass lamp. I lifted them like contraband. Faces bent and blurred, smiles frayed at the edges, each stillness folded into paper. In the second row, there was me, older hair, the same unsure set of the mouth, standing at 3 different porches across 3 different years. In one photo, my coat caught light oddly, as if the fabric held a shadow separate from the figure. I felt like a thief catching 2 fakes of his own reflection. The more I sifted, the more repetitions crept up. Echoes of steps, of dinners, of names repeated under different smiles. Night brought a different language. Windows became wells that reflected movement, fractionally out of sync, like a town watching its own afterimage. I wrote in the notebook because ink felt like an anchor against silence. The margins filled with dashed questions and small, sketched doorways. When the porch swing creaked at the edge of my hearing, I shouldered my coat and stepped into a street that smelled of ash warmed by the day's slow breath. Footprints in the lane were faint, not quite impressions, more like memories pressed into wet clay and left to weather. I followed the footprints to the center of town, where the clock tower's hands hung reluctant at a 1/4 past. Shop windows reflected me back multiplied, some smiling too early, others turning away before I finished a step. In the square, a group had gathered, faces I knew, frozen in the posture of remembered conversations. They didn't speak, but their mouths moved as if trying on phrases. When I called their names, the sound felt wrong in my throat, as if calling yourself out of a dream. A wind that carried no ash moved through the square, and the faces steadied, as if someone had read a script and nodded to stay in character. They told me, finally, in fragments, that memory has weight, that people can be left behind by being remembered the same way, day after day, like furniture. They never left, a voice said Maeve's from behind me, and it was both explanation and absolution. I felt ridiculous, desperate for a tidy answer, for a shove of logic. Instead, I felt the ash between my fingers, warm and tenacious, and a sensation like being pulled through a photograph. The town's attention settled on me, curious and patient, as if waiting to see whether I, too, would learn how to stay still. There was a moment when I thought I stepped away, packed the notebook, started the car, felt the engine come to life. The ash on the windshield blurred my view until headlights were only negotiations of light. In the rear view, a shape moved that wasn't mine, a figure stepping from the porch into the street, wearing my coat without wearing me. For a second, the world split like a photograph being slowly peeled, and I understood that leaving would require unpeeling someone who was already set in the paper. I parked and watched as the other me walked into a house that I had always meant to leave. I sat back on the curb with the notebook closed at my knees, and the town folded around me like a map that keeps reminding you of roads you once refused. The porch swing rocked once, then twice, settling like punctuation. I wrote one last line because words felt like the only revolt I had left. I am not leaving. The sentence sat wrong and right at the same time. Somewhere inside the house that wore my face, curtains shifted as if in answer. They never left Ash Hollow, and I wasn't alone, because wherever memory made a home, presence had already followed.